You know that specific moment at 40 in an apartment you've rented for years with two browser tabs open on the kitchen table? One has the mortgage calculator. The other has your brokerage account. You've done this before, more than once, quietly, late at night, after everyone else has gone to bed. You type in the numbers again, even though you already know them. The down payment, the closing costs, the monthly difference between what you pay in rent now and what you'd owe on a house instead. And the second tab, the one nobody at 40 is supposed to still be checking, keeps climbing slowly. Every single month you don't touch it.
You close the laptop. You already truly know the answer. You've known it for years.
While your money keeps quietly and patiently doing its work, something theirs has not been able to do in years. Here is what homeownership actually costs that nobody mentions at the dinner table. The average down payment on a home in America today is over $60,000, money that, the moment it leaves your account, stops earning anything for you and becomes tied to one single asset in one single location for as long as you stay. Beyond the mortgage, the average homeowner pays an additional 1 to 4% of the home's value every single year in maintenance, repairs, and upkeep. On a $400,000 home, that is $4,000 to $16,000 a year that never appears anywhere in the listing price and never even gets mentioned at the closing table. Add property taxes that climb nearly every year, regardless of income. Add homeowners insurance, which has risen sharply across many states in the last 5 years alone. Add the realtor commission, typically 5 to 6% of the sale price, paid the moment you ever decide to leave. None of this comes up at the dinner table. What comes up at the dinner table is simple. Renting is throwing money away. Buying is building equity. But equity is not the same as wealth. Equity is illiquid. It cannot pay for an emergency. It cannot be moved into something else. It sits in one house, rising or falling with a market nobody controls. In a location, someone may need to leave for reasons nobody can predict 5 years out. The people still renting at 40 already ran these numbers carefully, line by line, more than once, on more than one spreadsheet. Most people sitting at that same dinner table never actually have. There are two forces that keep people chasing homeownership long after the math stops making sense. One lives in the mind. One lives in the market. Both push in the same direction. The psychological force has a name: the sunk cost fallacy. The tendency to keep investing in something simply because of what has already been invested, rather than what makes sense going forward. It explains why people stay in homes they have outgrown, why they renovate kitchens they were already planning to leave, why selling, even at a profit, can feel like losing something, even when the numbers say otherwise. Homeownership, once entered, activates this mechanism almost immediately. The down payment alone creates a psychological anchor most people never question again, because questioning it would mean admitting the math might not have worked out the way the dinner table assumed it would. The second force is sociological, what researchers call identity decoupling, the rare ability to separate a sense of self-worth from what a person owns. Most people are taught, quietly and over decades, that a home is not just shelter. It is proof of stability, of having arrived, of being finally a real adult, as if renting were a permanent waiting room. Now, the financial result: the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies has tracked rent versus buy outcomes for decades. Their research consistently shows that the financial advantage of owning over renting depends entirely on one variable almost nobody asks about up front: how long you stay. A homeowner who puts $60,000 into a down payment, instead of investing that same amount in a diversified portfolio, gives up decades of compounding growth, often 6 figures by retirement, depending on the market and the timeline. Not from bad luck, not from a housing crash, not from anything outside their control that could not have been foreseen. From one early decision made to satisfy a feeling, not a forecast. The people still renting at 40 opted out of both forces entirely. They quietly decoupled their identity from an address and simply let their own money compound somewhere else entirely instead. But there is something nobody mentions about renting past 40. The specific kind of freedom that comes from not owning the walls around you. That apartment was there when the job offer came from another city, and you took it. No house to sell first, no 6 months of waiting for the right buyer, watching the listing sit while the offer you wanted quietly expired. Just 30 days notice and a decision you were free to make the moment it made sense, not the moment the market allowed it. It was there the winter the pipes would have burst in a house, and instead you called a number and someone else handled it before you finished your coffee. No $5,000 repair, no weekend lost to a problem you did not create. It was there the night, on a whim, you booked a midnight flight just because you could. No mortgage due, no house to ask permission from. No equity to consider, just the ticket and the choice to buy it. It was there during the years your career moved faster than your address needed to. 2 cities, 3 apartments, every move funded by money that was not locked into a down payment. You would have had to sell a house first to access. It was there the years someone very close to you turned down the better job offer, because moving meant selling first, and selling meant a loss they could not afford to take that year. You noticed. You said nothing. And it was there the first time someone asked, again, when you were finally going to settle down and stop wasting your money. And you realized you already had. Just not in a way that ever truly and visibly shows up on a deed, or ever comes up easily in a normal, polite, dinner table conversation. So, who is still renting at 40? Not the person most people picture. It is not the person who cannot afford a down payment. Many of them have one sitting in an account right now, earning more sitting still than a house ever would. It is not the person who failed to plan. Many of them have a more detailed financial plan than most homeowners. They simply ran the numbers and the numbers pointed somewhere else, and they were honest enough to follow them. It is the person who looked at the full cost of ownership, not the mortgage, the full cost, and decided the math did not support tying that much capital to one address in one zip code. They are the friend who has moved cities twice for better opportunities without ever once mentioning the inconvenience of selling a house, because there was never a house standing in the way. Not because they are making a statement, because moving has simply never been complicated for them, and they stopped finding that worth explaining years ago. They are the person who, when asked why they have not bought yet, gives a number instead of an excuse, something close to this. I'm renting for $1,800 a month. The house I almost bought would have cost me $4,000 a month all in. I'm investing the difference every single month. That is not simply a delay. That is a decision. And the next time someone calls it throwing money away, that decision has an answer ready. Now, the objection. Renting is throwing money away. At least with a mortgage, you're building something. You'll have nothing to show for it at 65. This argument carries a grain of truth for someone who genuinely affords it and stays long enough to absorb the costs. But this is not about people who cannot afford to buy. If that's you, nothing here is meant to make a hard market feel like personal failure. This is about people who could and ran the numbers anyway. And the numbers carry more weight than the objection assumes. A 2017 academic paper titled A Revision of the American Dream of Homeownership set out to answer why owner households tend to end up wealthier than renters. The answer was not property appreciation. It was almost entirely about whether a household saved and invested the cash flow difference between renting and owning. Home ownership did not build the wealth. Saving did. Even paying off the mortgage doesn't change that math the way it feels like it should. A bias economists call mental accounting, treating cash flow and capital like two separate problems. The payment disappears, but the equity sitting in that house, hundreds of thousands of dollars, earning nothing, still carries a real cost. Everywhere else, that money could have grown instead. How long you stay decides how much the mistake costs you. Whether you save, difference decides if there even is one. The people still renting at 40 are not avoiding ownership. They are refusing to own something the real math does not support, simply because everyone else already does, without ever once checking the real numbers. Here is what most people never stop to calculate. The homeowner being congratulated at that same dinner table signed a 30-year contract with one specific lender in one specific location, a bet that one particular version of their life would hold steady. The version where the job stays, where the neighborhood stays good, where the relationship stays, where their health stays the same, where the city itself stays the kind of place they still want to wake up in 3 decades from now. 30 years is a long time to bet on nothing changing. In a single mortgage, in a single market, in a single version of a life that has not even happened yet. And the person being quietly judged for still renting never made that bet. Their money stayed flexible. Their location stayed flexible. Their entire life stayed flexible on purpose, year after year. A home is not proof that you made it. It is one way to spend the money that proves it. And for the people still renting at 40 by choice, it was simply never the only way that ever truly made sense to them once they actually sat down and carefully looked at every single number on the page. There is a moment people still renting at 40 all describe in almost the same way. It is not signing a new lease. It is not the freedom of a 30-day notice. It is a Tuesday, not a special one. You open that second tab again, the way you always do, out of habit more than need now, and noticing the number has quietly become something nobody at that dinner table will ever ask to see. Not because it isn't real, because it doesn't look like what they were trained to look for. And then, at some point, the question stops feeling like anything at all. Not because they stopped caring what people thought, because they finally understood what the question was actually asking, underneath all the concern in the voice. It was never really, truly asking where exactly you live. It was asking whether you have real, tangible proof, something to point to, something that looks, from the outside, like arriving somewhere permanent and solid. You don't need a deed to prove you built a life. You just need to stop waiting for someone else's definition of arriving. 30 years from now, nobody asks which tab you kept open. They ask what you built. Do you have a second tab? A number your dinner table has never asked to see? What's it become? And has anyone ever made you feel like that was the wrong call? Drop it below. We read every single one.